Comrades and friends, the Iranian Revolution, that is something that, as a socialist, as a revolutionary, fills me with great pride. As an internationalist, this just proves that no people can be kept down forever. That you can push people down, you can oppress them, you can take away their democratic rights, you can whip them, you can beat them, you can imprison them, you can even murder them. And no dictatorial force can last forever. And that is something, I see a lot of faith in this room. And this is faith in the ability of humanity to fight back and win. And I think that is something, that is, for characterization, that's the question, what is the characterization of the events of the last few weeks? It's the beginning of the Iranian Revolution, the beginning of the Iranian people standing up, getting off their knees, and saying, with almost one voice, with millions of people on the streets, this regime does not represent us. And that is the beginning of the end of this regime. That is the absolute beginning of the end. Unfortunately, it's not the end of this regime. This is a process that will continue. But it's very interesting how this came about. Like, I think most people in this room, I don't know, this will be a good part of the debate, do not think that Mousavi is necessarily the answer to the Iranian people. He's an accidental figure. Actually, he was the prime minister through the early 80s. He was a prime minister that was responsible for the imprisonment and death of tens of thousands of socialists and trade unionists and other activists. But somehow, this man actually became a figurehead in the present movement. And that can seem completely inexplicable. But the reality of it is, in a dictatorial regime, the people are looking for any outlet. For those of us old enough to remember what a pressure cooker is, in a pressure cooker, you heat up a pot, but if you clamp down the lid, the pressure just builds up and builds up and builds up, and eventually it breaks through, and it looks for any single little crack. And that crack was Mousavi's candidacy and the electoral fraud, which was so blatant that recently they had to, when they were accused, I think it was 130 electoral districts where there was more than 100% of voters voted, somebody said. The regime came back and said, no, it was only 50 electoral districts. As if that made it okay. Could you imagine that in the Canadian election? In 50 constituencies, they come back and said, oh, it's more than 100% of people voted, but it doesn't matter, it wouldn't have changed the result anyway. I think there'd still be wide-scale opposition. But having started with Mousavi, it has gone beyond that. And after Khamenei came out and called for the trial and possible death sentence of protesters, the demand of death to the dictator has become more and more popular in Iran. And this changes the entire game. Where will this lead? That's the question. Where will this lead? What we haven't seen in the last few weeks is the working class coming out in a large, organized fashion. There's been talk about a general strike. And if you look at the lessons of the 1979 revolution in Iran, which was a genuine workers' revolution until it was taken over by the mullahs, it was a genuine workers' revolution. The force that was key in bringing down the CIA-backed Shah regime was the oil workers and the other sectors of the working class. And the new Iranian revolution needs to learn that lesson from 1979. And there needs to be an active organization of the working class as the real force that can sweep the old regime away. there needs to be, a new constitution, a new democratic constitution, a new constituent assembly, where all sections of the population can have their voice and have their say. But in the end, I believe, this must, that the Iranian people, to put a dividing line between the mullahs on one side and the imperialist United States, Britain, France, Canada, the other regimes that are trying to gain out of this movement, well, the only ideas that will put a dividing line between both of these, for lack of a better word, evil alternatives, is socialism. So that's where I hope the Iranian Revolution will go, but it hasn't ended, and I think we're in for a rocky road ahead. Thank you.